testing audio. Hello, hello.
You are audible.
All right, I can hear you as well.
Oh, it gave me a heart attack for a second. I was just vibing to like the Discord waiting music, like doo, 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 doo. And it was like testing audio. Like, oh.
The music muted. How do I turn it on?
Well,
there
you
it is.
can't now because we're speaking on the stage. It's gone.
No, I turned it on. I can hear it.
What? How? Oh, okay. There we go. Yeah,
Turn on my camera. Q&A. I will be awkwardly standing because I can't stay in my chair.
good job.
So I can kneel down. This works. Oh, looks like we have someone in the audience. Hi there. So maybe it's a plan to wait a few minutes for people to filter in and then start.
Yep. We start the actual event thing.
Oh, I should point my camera at my cat. That'll be a better stream. Let's see if it reaches. Cat.
Yeah.
And what's the format going to be like? People typing questions in chat mostly?
Yeah. That's usually a good way to go about it, but people can raise their hand if they have questions too. I see we have a couple of people, Mr. Cliche and Joshi4637. Either you have any questions?
Ooh, how long it took us to make this game? Josh asks. So yeah, there's a whole history there. We started real full-time development on it back in May of 2023. But that isn't actually where the idea started. The idea started back around, July 2022. We were finishing up Superfly, and we had a company-wide game jam where everyone on the team went and created games or created little presentations for ideas on what the company's next game should be. And one of my projects during that was the precursor to Elements. I bashed together a few assets and made a very simple demo. We could levitate boulders and then throw them around. And the controls, they were okay. They weren't amazing. But, it was an interesting enough prototype that we decided to go with it. Then around December 2022, I think I improved the prototype and got close to the controls that we have now. And then May 2023, we said, okay, we're done with Superfly for now. We're going to focus on Elements. And then we took that prototype and we started adding the other elements and trying to make it into a full game. And it's been a long year and a half since then. I hope I answered your question well enough. But if you have, any more details you want to ask, feel free to follow up. Year and a half. Yep, it's only been a year and a half. Technically, we had the prototypes that were starting before then, but year and a half of full-time development. And we lost like half of that because the game was originally not even going to be PvP. So then we had to transition a lot. Then we changed the whole netcode thing. Yeah. The first element was Earth. And Earth was the one that we prototyped and the initial demos that made us even decide to go with this. And it was also the first one that we implemented into the game. And the reason for that is that Earth is a very kind of physical element. It's one where you're really interacting with your surroundings to use it. And it's also kind of a fairly straightforward one. Water is harder because like you've got these weird amorphous shapes that change as you go. Fire doesn't really interact with the environment as much, and air kind of has both of those problems at once. So Earth was just the natural starting point. It was easiest to render, and yeah, we got it.
I mean, you can imagine, like, if you had to pick one of the four, it's much easier to make the first element be something that you literally just pick up and throw, because you can do that with anything. It doesn't even need to be a rock. Than to, like you said, make an amorphous blob or something that doesn't even exist in space, like air.
Or another way to think about it, like how many of your favorite games have rocks in them? Basically, every game has a rock.
Yeah.
But how many games have moving water? Not many. How many have fire? More, but still not as many. But everyone has rocks. Rocks are just the easiest to do.
Mr. Magikarp says, which element is your favorite outside of the context of the game?
You want to start?
Uh, Outside of the context of the game? I mean, I guess in the context of maybe the show, like Avatar: The Last Airbender, Legend of Korra, or whatever, I prefer water. I always thought it was very interesting because you can do like bloodbending and all this other stuff. In terms of just like in the real world, in real life, I'm not sure I have like a favorite element. I don't like commonly just go, let me set things on fire, or yeah. I don't know. What do you think, Roy?
I mean, if you could pick one element to bend in real life, which one would you pick?
Definitely water.
Okay. I would pick Earth. I feel like there's more Earth around than water, or you can like do more cool things with it. So you can like do construction, you can shape it all in all these interesting ways. It's very versatile.
Oh god, can you imagine how much faster construction would be if we had earthbenders in real life?
Yeah, you just raise up walls. Like Joshi says, metal is everywhere.
Mm-hmm. Air is everywhere too. Yeah, air could be kind of hazardous though. Like if you've watched The Legend of Korra, there's that one scene with Zahir and the Queen. Not gonna spoil it if you don't know what I'm talking about, but
Well, every element is hazardous. I mean, you throw a boulder at someone's head, you light them on fire?
well, I might be able to dodge that. I can't dodge you just, you know.
Yeah, air is everywhere, but it's not as cool because it's just like you can't even see it. It's just like you blow at things.
Yeah. And Mr. Cliche says fire would be handy and you don't need to be next to you to use. Yeah. Yeah, fire and air have the kind of unique thing of you can just kind of make them out, at least in terms of the show, you can just kind of make them out of thin air. You don't need something around you. But like water, you have to have a physical material to manipulate. Earth, you have to have earth near you, or metal, or whatever.
So Joshi asks, what is next for the future of the game? So that is a really big question, and I'm happy to answer it. But it might be multiple different questions just because we have a lot planned. I guess we should start with like the near future stuff. Well, one fun thing that I just have been working on for the past week are new ultimate abilities. So these aren't going to replace the current ultimates, but they're going to be new options that you can pick alongside them. So you either pick the current ultimate, or this new ultimate, or even like future ultimates. I have a new ultimate implemented for each of the four elements. I ended up actually going a little bit faster than I thought it would. I thought it would take me a lot of time, but it went pretty smoothly. So that's probably going to release soon. If we're lucky, it'll even make the playtest next week. And then, yeah, there's a lot of other stuff. There's probably going to be a new level that's going to make that playtest. There's a bunch of bug fixes. Let me see if there's any of those that are significant here. None that are super significant. I guess some art updates, like better stadium art. But that's like a 2-week range. Longer than that, there's going to be a lot more in the future of the game. The big points in the next like 3-ish months, we want to add an XP and leveling system to the game, so that as you play more matches and as you use the abilities more and more, you level up your character and unlock new things. So that might be something like when you first boot up the game, you don't start with all of your elemental abilities unlocked because there's like dozens of them, and that's a little bit overwhelming for new players. Maybe you start the game and you just have, say, the Earth Boulder and the Earth Wall unlocked for Earth, or similar basic abilities for the other elements. Then, as you play a few matches and you level up, you unlock the rest of the abilities over time. And then, as you keep leveling up, you unlock the ultimates, and then you unlock more ultimate options, and then you unlock techniques, and then you unlock cosmetics, and all that kind of thing. And yeah, I can describe any of those in more detail if people are curious. But yeah, fast question from Mild Flames is he has to go, but is asking if there's any plans of a map maker. Unfortunately, not. It is actually pretty difficult to create the maps that we have right now, and it's not something that we can really make accessible for VR that well. Performance would kind of suck if you didn't use it correctly. There would be a lot of physics issues. Unfortunately, not possible. If people wanted to mod it, then it would be possible to mod it to add new maps, though.
We've got from Mr. Magikarp, what future feature are you most excited to experiment with, like ultimates or passives?
Well, I think the one I'm most excited about, there's the Earth rework. The Earth rework is going to be cool to experiment with. The other one is a new hub world that we have as a possibility. This is still something that we are experimenting with right now, but we're imagining a kind of large open nature scene to give you a lot of space to explore, a lot of hidden secrets to find, animals to interact with, that kind of stuff, and a much more relaxing, peaceful vibe than the current kind of sci-fi bunker scene. If that does work out, no promises, I think it'll be pretty cool. Maeve, what about you? What feature are you most excited about?
I am interested to see when we release the Earth rework how many people find new ways to fly.
There's got to be too many ways.
It's too many ways.
Mm-hmm.
Joshi says, what are the new ultimates going to be?
Let me open up Unity and the project files so I can actually show you them live. So it will take Unity a little minute to open. So maybe let's come back to this question. Do one more first.
Yeah, so Mr. Cliche says, will there be an official tournament mode or just use the normal game mode for those?
I don't really know. Yeah. Maybe?
Yeah, tournaments
it depends on...
thought a whole lot about yet.
Mm-hmm. So we're definitely going to be running tournaments through this Discord. Tournaments as a feature in the game itself probably depends on how much demand there is for them. If tournaments are an exciting feature that people really want to see, then we could do that. But if you had to pick between tournaments and, say, new ultimate abilities, and you only got one or the other, well, which should we spend our time developing? So it's a maybe, but it just depends on how many people want it.
How's your Unity loading?
I think it is loaded. So let me see if I can share my screen. All right, is this working?
Yep.
Okay. Oh, I'm on the wrong branch. So give me a second. Yeah. Right, Unity will take a little while to load. Let's do another question first.
Mr. Magikarp says, it's so sad the Sauson is gone. The Sauson. Is that...
Oh, that was the Earth flight trick where you use the saw to hit yourself
forward. Right. Does it not work anymore with the new physics engine?
Nope. Or at least I don't think it does.
Nice. Inadvertently fixed it, even though we didn't know how to fix it. Cool.
Yeah, let's go.
Mr. Cliche says, will there be gambling? Not with real money, though.
Why would we have gambling?
I'm not really sure what the gambling would be. Gamble for skins or outfits, like what you.
I'm not really a fan of gambling.
both.
Unless there's a very good reason to add it, I would say probably not.
I mean, you're already gonna most likely unlock cosmetics by leveling up, getting XP over time, and that'll be at least somewhat random. Some of the unlocks might be random, so that's the closest you're gonna get to gambling. But we're trying not to like add a bunch of weird. It's not a free to play game. We put it that way. You're paying money for the game already. You should be able to play it. Mr. Magikarp says, could have some of the unlocks be the respective parts and color swatches of the different elements for all others? Like through gambling or just through cosmetic unlocks? I mean, you're already gonna, I think, start with all the different element colors, and then other swatches, I assume, would be unlocked by leveling up. Yeah. Yeah, the leveling system unlocks. Some of them will probably be color swatch palettes. Joshi says, so when you level up, you gain some in-game money, which you could spend on cosmetic boxes. I mean, you could. I don't know that we're going to go that route, necessarily. It'll more just be like, you level up, and it'll be like, you unlocked a thing! Congrats! Loot boxes need to come back? I disagree.
We're not totally sure if we're going to do like random rewards for leveling up or whether they're going to be fixed rewards, but we are not currently planning to have loot boxes that you buy. That is not necessary for the game.
Yeah. Like I said, it's just a lot more common in like a free-to-play game because they have to make money somehow. You're already playing the game for free. Why don't you buy a loot box to support or whatever? But you're gonna pay money for the game. Well, maybe not all of you, because some of you are testers. You might already get a free copy, but most people are gonna buy the game. So, on a Joshi says, on a scale of 1 to 28.7, rate each element. What a strange scale.
Earth, 23.2. Water, 14.5. Fire, 21.9. Air, 6.
What would air?
Oh, except the glider. Yeah, the glider is a solid like 23. But the rest of air is a 6.
What did air ever do to you, Rory?
It existed.
Oh, okay. This is just the hardest to program.
Yeah, it's like the graphics are annoying, and then there's not really physical air attacks in real life that you can take inspiration from, so we had to make a lot of things up. It's just kind of less natural and intuitive to implement than the others.
Mr. Cliche says, will more be done with the AI mode?
Yes. We have a whole document with plans for all the different enemies we're going to implement. And we have, like 5 different enemy types in the game right now. And those are the 5 simplest enemies. So we started with them. But we've got plans for like another 5 or 6 more diverse and interesting ones. Let me just pull up that document right now so I can go down the list. My Unity is still loading, but I will show off the new ultimates once it has. But yeah, so the list of enemies we have, these little capsule drone and this energy ball drone and the sniper drone right now. But then what about like a robot that crawls up walls and then shoots missiles out of its back? What about a robot that just walks along the ground and then like shoots these, streams of powerful energy blasts at you? What about a robot that just walks up to you and explodes? And then we're also going to have more mini boss style robots, just larger ones that are tougher, stronger, that kind of thing. Oh, and a fun one that I'm calling the Cube Bot, where it has a shield, so it tries to block all of your attacks. And you have to either wait for it to drop its shield or use attacks that are strong enough to pierce through. Those are the basic enemies. We are going to add at least one more boss enemy, and then use that to set up a few different missions where you can fight like the first boss, the second boss, or maybe even both at once, and have a very limited like story-ish AI progression mode there.
To add on to this, Joshi says, would there be an enemy that uses elements?
Maybe. So, yeah, maybe we should go into the history of the game to explain what we used to be trying to do with the enemies. You want to tell people about the original co-op plans?
Oh god, I don't even fully remember. I know we used to have human NPCs, and they originally shot like poison attacks. But I mean, as far as I can remember, we were always kind of like, I don't know if they're gonna shoot elemental abilities or not. But maybe you remember differently.
Yeah. So to give everyone the context here, when we first started working on elements, we did not plan for it to be PvP. When we first
Oh,
started
that's
working on
what you mean.
elements, we actually thought it was going to be a multiplayer co-op versus AI game, kind of like Deep Rock Galactic, maybe, with a few roguelike elements. So you got stronger and stronger during runs. And we spent, 6 to 12 months just working on the game with that idea. And the biggest challenge we ran into there was actually the enemies. It is really difficult to make the enemies fun to fight. When you're fighting another player, if you use the same strategy all the time, the other player can understand that strategy and can adapt. If you try to hide in a corner, the other player can, reach you in that corner and beat you. If you just spam a bunch of moves, the other player can, dodge or block or counter those moves. AI enemies can't really do any of those. And when we were trying to focus the game entirely on fighting AI enemies, it just wasn't as fun because they were easy to beat and couldn't really do much to you. Our original AI enemies just shot these basic like poison bolts at people. But we were planning to add more advanced kind of mini boss AI enemies that used broader elemental abilities. But it turns out that was also hard because the elemental abilities we have in the game are really complicated, and getting an AI to use them is also really complicated. So then we realized, oh, wait, we can make the enemies both more interesting to fight and much better at using elemental abilities if the enemies are just real people instead of AI. So then we tried out a PvP mode. Turned out it was actually a lot more fun than the co-op mode, and we transitioned the game to be focused on PvP instead of co-op.
Yeah. Let's see. Mr. Regcarp said it would be fun if some of the mini bosses had weak points or certain things only some elements could interact with, like exposed wires that take more damage from water.
Maybe. So weak points I agree with. Getting like headshot bonuses would be awesome. And exposed points that only some elements can interact with, I mean, that kind of sounds cool, but then, okay, what if I'm an earthbender? Then can I just not have fun there? I would personally rather focus on interactions that everyone can have fun with instead of ones that are unique to certain elements.
Joshy says, could you make it so that enemy attacks actually hurt them? Because I catch the enemy bullets from the mech using air telekinesis and throw it back to them, but it just goes through them.
Yeah, that is something that is planned and something that this netcode and physics pre-work should actually let us do a lot more easily. So yeah, I want to do that. I can show off new ultimates now because my Unity finally loaded.
I do have one
Is this
more
screen share
question.
working?
Yes, it is.
Oh,
I do have one more question before you get into that, just before it scrolls off the page. Gaming asks, any plans for some sort of avatar mode where you have all the elements?
it could be a fun optional game mode. It's not going to be the core of the game. The core of the game is going to be you have one single element. But maybe there could be like a boss mode where it's one person who can freely switch between all the elements and has buff stats against everyone else in the lobby. I think TF2 did something similar. Might have been a mod at some point. Yeah, that could be a fun optional mode. We would need to figure out the controls though, because we're using a lot of buttons already.
What Joshi says, what drink does Maeve have? It is milk tea with boba.
Okay.
Okay, so ultimates.
Ultimates. Yeah, so one of the features that's probably going to make the playtest next week are new ultimate abilities, one per element. And you'll be able to freely switch between them with the UI kind of like this. You just, pick either the old ultimate or the new ultimate. And eventually there's going to be even more. So going one by one, the air ultimate is currently called the air slash trap. When you use that ultimate, it sends out a projectile forward that looks a little bit like this. Let me just do that. And then if this projectile hits someone, it traps them in place and kind of levitates them upwards for a few seconds. And then as they're being held there in place, these slashes come by and just like, I don't know, a dozen of these different slashes just hit you from every angle. So it's like you're levitated in place and then just barraged by all these air slashes. It is pretty hard to hit because it's a fairly small initial projectile. But if you do get hit, it does a lot of damage. You can't block it. And you're stuck in place so other people can follow up. Then next up is Earth. Earth has its ultimate is called the Earth Death Trap. You channel and then you summon these spiky thing from the ground. It like, spawns underground and then it shoots up. And then all around that thing, these walls appear. And these walls initially start like rotated down, but then as soon as that spiky bit in the middle pops up, then all four walls on the side slam upwards. And if you're caught in the middle and you get hit by all four walls, you take a lot of damage. But it is also relatively easy to dodge because it only appears on the ground and there's a delay there. But yeah, being caught in the middle of four walls with a lot of spikes is a fun ability.
Mr. Magikarp says, oh, this was from that teaser a while ago that Maeve showed. Yeah, that was like months ago, so we've had this idea for a while.
Next one is for fire. This might actually be my favorite effect. It is a massive fire pillar. You just channel on the ground and then boom, fire shoots up. Fun note, you can actually also use this on a wall and then the fire shoots sideways. So if I use the ability on the wall here, then I can make the fire pillar go boom and kind of hit you from a weird angle. But yeah, I think the effects are really cool here. Our VFX artist did a great job with this one. Boom. And then lastly, another fun VFX one is the Water Atom Bomb, which is just a giant projectile that you shoot forward and it goes through everything. Goes through the map, goes through players, and it just doesn't stop. And here it is. So this guy is big, but it is also slow. So you charge it up in front of you, and then it shoots forward, but it does not move very quickly at all. So fairly easy to dodge, unless you're in melee range and you don't have time. But if this thing is coming at you, you need to get out of the way because it does a lot of damage. So those are the 4 new abilities that are planned. Any questions about them?
Are there any plans to balance the current ultimates more relative to each other?
I mean, I always want the ultimates to be balanced. It's a little bit tricky because it's hard to tell which ones are strong, which ones are weak. Because it's also like, is it the ultimate that's weak, or is it the rest of the element that's weak? But yeah, we do want to keep balancing them. Earth Meteor, I think it could be a little bit faster. It's kind of slow. And then, yeah, also the Air Ultimate. I feel like it could be a little bit more interesting. If people have thoughts and suggestions on how you want the ultimates to be balanced, always happy to hear them. Because we are going to keep tuning and balancing them as we go. Especially as we add new ultimates, because all the ultimates for an element have to be balanced against each other.
Question from a few minutes ago from Mr. Cliche. Will there be any music? There is music in the game right now, currently. We did update it recently. If you mean, will there be any custom music, like an actual proper soundtrack? That's a solid probably not, just because we don't have anyone who can like make custom music or fancy soundtrack. I mean, who knows? But I would say there's not currently plans for anything like that. Um, from the Great Saxtonian, what was the choice for going with a modern slash futuristic aesthetic over a more fantasy setting to go with the element bending?
Yeah, so this relates to our decision to go with a PvP focus instead of a co-op versus AI focus. Because the original vision for the game, when we were planning for it to be co-op versus AI instead of PvP, was a little bit more of a fantasy steampunk style setting, where like maybe the enemies are these evil industrialists and you're some good aligned nature faction that's trying to stop them from polluting the world. And there it was, fantasy, early industrial type aesthetics. Um, then, when we abandoned that and moved towards a PvP focus, we were trying to think of what kind of a setting would justify going into a ring and beating up a bunch of other players in a way that's more fun and not just you're killing people. And that's when we decided on we wanted it to be a sports tournament where the matches in the game are canonically sporting event matches. They all take place in a giant stadium, and you are a contestant in that stadium fighting to win the tournament and become the best element bender. And sports stadium are naturally a modern type thing. Then we went a little bit more sci-fi with it because in a sci-fi setting, we can have that stadium be even more interesting than a modern stadium. Modern stadiums have to obey, well, physics. But sci-fi stadiums can have more interesting things like floating platforms or crazy out there things or spaceships. And yeah, that was motivation.
From Mr. Cliche, I feel like your health is hard to track. Is this intentional, or will there be a change to fix that?
This is not intentional. This is we're working on the UI. One of my tasks for next week actually is trying to change the player health UI to make it easier. We have some concepts from the UI artist on our team that I'm going to try implementing to see if they work. One of the things that I'm going to try, for example, is putting a giant health bar at the bottom of your screen so it's always in your field of view. This is similar to Rumble VR, for example, if anyone has played that. I think Population 1 does a similar thing. Um, so maybe that'll work. And if so, that'll be great because it'll make your health easier to track, and I want that. Maybe it'll cover too much of the screen, it'll be distracting. I'll need to test it to know for sure. But I absolutely do want to make your health easier to read because the game isn't supposed to be a mystery game about how much health you have. It's supposed to be a combat game about how to use the elemental abilities to the best you can.
The Great Saxonian says, one of the issues I've felt with aiming the lightning ultimate is that it's aimed from the face, not the hands. Is there a way to make that a toggle?
Yeah, we can do that. It's currently aimed through kind of a weird mix of both the face and the hands. We were trying to find a way to aim things that was kind of intuitive so that even if you don't know how it's aimed, it'll still work. So people who think it's with the face can kind of aim it with that. People who think it's with the hands can do that. But yeah, I could see there totally being room for toggles that make it entirely one or the other.
Joshi says, will there ever be a healing ability?
Well, there just might be. Maeve, do you want to explain?
Yeah, so with the new techniques that we've been looking at, one of the potential options would be a water technique, specifically for the water element, where you do more damage but also heal for a percentage, or no, do less damage and heal for a percentage, something like that. Um, that would be the only one we currently have any plans for, because at least I guess sort of canonically in the show, water is typically the healing element. Other elements are not. There's also potential for maybe health pickups around the map, something we've thought about, because right now we don't have any pickups or any items like that, but it could be something in the future. Gaming says, I like most of the air abilities, but I find that the primary airball attack seems a bit weird to use in the context of bending. Will the current version be similar to the final product, or is there a rework coming?
To clarify, there's a couple kind of airball related things. Do you mean like the one-handed air stream attack, or like the two-handed air sphere type attack?
Typing. The one-handed
Ah, the
one
one-handed
chaser
one.
attack.
Yeah, it's not ideal. Ideally, it would be a little bit more like you twirl it around yourself and make this long stream of air that you send towards the enemy. But it was difficult to make that twirling motion work correctly because it's not really intuitive. If you compare it to something like the firebolt or the earth boulder, those you just grab and then you throw. The water stream is kind of similar, has a little bit more twirling, but it's still a grab and throw. So for the air, especially because it's hard to see, because, well, it's air, um, we've had to kind of try to strike a balance between the more air-like twirling motion and the more direct, intuitive, just punchy motion. Um, I'm not saying that the current version of the move has struck the right balance, and that's something that we will probably need to look at again because I agree that is kind of a weaker part of the element. But yeah, if you have suggestions for how it could be improved, I would love to hear that because we've tried a few things and haven't found anything amazing.
Mr. Magikarp says you could make it similar to its equivalent in Overhaul, where instead it creates air streams that push people along the path of your hands.
Overhaul. Oh, yeah. I will have to take a look at that. But yeah, I guess I'm not super familiar with the mechanic, but thank you for the suggestion.
Hopping back a little bit to UI, Mr. Cliche says, I'm no dev, but one thing I don't like in VR is when a UI is perfectly stuck to your face, so I hope that isn't too bad. Maybe you can lag behind a bit.
Yeah, UI stuck to your face sucks. One thing that we're going to try to do is have UI that's kind of like more around your waist but forward. So it's like when you rotate your head, it doesn't exactly rotate and it kind of follows behind with a little bit of a lag. And hopefully that would be a little bit more comfortable than one that's totally stuck to your face. I don't want anything totally stuck to your face. That's just not comfortable.
And hopping back again to air, the Great Saxtonian says a knockback air punch similar to the flamethrower punch, perhaps.
Yeah, so we've done a lot of iterations on air, and even a bunch since we started the game. The first versions of air did do that, and it wasn't actually as cool as it sounded. Not because the ability idea is bad, but because when we tried to do the VFX, it was hard to make the VFX for that kind of thing look good. The flamethrower effects, I think, turned out pretty well, but we were not able to match the quality of the flamethrower effects for a more kind of air flamethrower ability. Tried a bunch of options, it never really worked out. If we can find better effects for that, I could see that ability making a return, but it turned out to be a lot harder than it sounded.
Joshi says, what about passive healing? Like if you haven't been damaged for a certain amount of time, you heal a little health, which so fun fact, that did used to be in the game in very early versions, and we found it creates a sort of a problem where if you're in a game with a lot of people, you just kind of hide out in a corner or whatever. Everyone else dies, and then you get hit a few times, and then you go hide out somewhere, and then you get hit a few times, go hide out somewhere. And I think that's kind of why we added the control point initially. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it just it makes the game take a lot longer, and we're not sure if that's really a good thing. At least with health pickups, there's a limited amount of them, so you can't just regenerate infinitely. Mr. Cliche says some moves are a bit finicky with when they're triggered, water arms and water donut as examples. Will there be a fix for that, like swap buttons or hand motions, or is this the best option?
So I'm always happy to add settings to modify the controls for people who do want different controls. Um, so if you have a specific control change you want to request, then I can add that. Just like the ice daggers have two different modes that you can swap between. Um, yeah, as for the base controls, which is the one that I want to spend the most time on because that's what most players will use, it's tough. There's only so many different gestures out there that you can really distinguish between. And I did my best with the water arms versus the water bubble, where like if your hands are far apart, it'll make the water arms, and if they're close together, it makes the water bubble. This is another kind of thing where I tried a bunch of options and tried to find the best balance, but I'm not totally confident that I did hit the best balance. And if you have other ideas that you think we should try there, I would be happy to hear that, because I agree it's not perfect right now. It could be improved. I just don't know exactly how to improve it.
Hopping back to healing again, maybe just in co-op versus AI, or the Great Saxtonian says allowing health regeneration could allow for more strategic gameplay. Perhaps it could be a toggle for a different game mode.
Yeah, so again, I think health pickups on the map might be the way to go for this, both because it makes the map more interesting and kind of gives the players a little objective to fight over. Something that's just passive health regeneration tends to mean that you want to avoid combat to let that kick in. And, well, the game's about fighting, it's not about avoiding combat. So, we might not have something that's just a passive health regeneration, but we could have other healing options that strike a balance between healing and actually fighting.
Talking about back to water arm / water donut. If it's an option, it would need to be close or as good as the other one. A button that lets you swap from light to heavy moves might work well. My question would be, what's technically a light or a heavy move?
And also, what button is it?
And
what, right now we have all the abilities are just the trigger with sometimes tap grip to phase change. And I don't really want to add more buttons, because the more buttons you add, the harder it is to play and the harder it is to learn.
This is a fun one. Mr. Magikarp said, where did the name Elements Divided come from, considering there are no walls between the paths to switch elements, so they're not divided? So name was something we kind of struggled on for a while. Originally, the working name, project name, was just Elements, straight up Elements. And I still wish we could do that. Unfortunately, both on Steam and on the Meta Store, there is already a game called Elements. It's completely different. It's like the one on the Meta Store is some sort of like environmental simulator thing. It's not even really much of a game. It's more of an experience. So it's a couple of eagle-eyed people have found old references to another name we tried, which was Force of Nature. The problem with that one is it's both kind of a mouthful and quite a bit to type out, but there was also 2 games on Steam also called Force of Nature, I think, or something very similar. So that wasn't great either. And we all just kind of kept calling it Elements. We tried to do Force of Nature for a month and a half or 2 months, and we would all just keep reverting back to, so, today in Elements, Force of Nature, it did not really work. So we're like, okay, we got to add something, and we had like a whole list of different names that started with Elements but had something else. And then one of our artists, Nini, who's our UI artist currently, she was like, what about Elements Divided? And we were kind of like ping-ponging it around. We're like, that could maybe work. And then we kind of forgot about it for a couple weeks, came back, and we ran a poll in our development server, which is not one you guys can see, but we have a bunch of our friends and family in there. And I believe Elements Divided won, or it was second to the top. I think Elements was first place. And it was like, well, still can't do that. So then we just went with Elements Divided, and it's kind of stuck. The only problem is our acronym is ED, which is not great. If you know anything about what that means, I'm not going to explain it because many of you are minors, but don't look it up. So now the hard part is we have to tell everyone that we talked to the game about, don't call it ED, call it Elements. Please call it Elements.
So there's a chance it will change the name of the game in the future because of that, but who knows?
Now it's more or less, I feel like it'll always be something with the word Elements, but maybe the second word will change. Who knows? And Miss Magikarp says, so you did it to divide yourselves from the other game called Elements. I mean, technically, yeah. And also, you don't do all 4 elements at once, so they're divided. You know?
Yeah, exactly. See, that's why we don't have the avatar mode or anything like it, because the elements are divided. You can't have all 4 at once. That'd be cheating.
Elements are divided. Yeah.
Also, it's a PvP game. You're divided from the other players.
The Great Saxtonian says, I do want to say that when I first played the game, when I set my element to fire and simply tried punching downwards to jetpack and it worked, I was filled with so much joy I cannot accurately describe in text. I sincerely hope that the jetpack hands either stays or is even expanded upon.
Oh, it'll definitely be expanded upon. Because I agree, it is like my favorite fire move because I love flying. So actually, this could be a good chance to get feedback. I've got some ideas for how it could be expanded. But the main one is that what if the fire double jump, instead of just being a double jump, was kind of like a jetpack jump? So you tap A once to jump, and then if you hold A while you're in the air, it does this jetpack boost upwards. That starts the double jump, and then further like jet feats yourself upwards and forwards if you're also moving that direction. Thoughts? Oh, I mean, yeah, I made Superfly. Of course, I love flying. Yeah, like that's the best thing you can do in VR. Because I can't fly in real life, but I can fly in VR, and that's the next best thing.
Superfly flew so that elements divide could fly higher. I don't know, something like that.
No, so you could fly. So you can't fly in elements. Flying is banned. If
Yeah,
you want to fly, go play Superfly.
Superfly fly. It's elements divided could run. That's it.
Uh-huh. So elements divided could fly like 10 feet off the ground, but no higher.
Yeah, exactly. Fire having an advantage over flying could make it have a distinct flavor over the other elements.
Yeah. Every element needs to be distinct, and fire having more options to jet itself around the battlefield is a great way to do that.
And Mr. Magikarp says, but why not air? Well, I counter with you have a glider, you can already kind of fly. At least to the extent that, like, you could in the show. Like, well, okay, we're not talking about Zahir, he's special. But otherwise, in the show, like, you could glide, and that was kind of it.
So, and in elements, because we're not copying everything from Avatar, we have kind of a mindset that every element needs to have certain things that it's really good at. Fire needs to be really good at offense. Earth needs to be kind of more simple and really good at defense. Water is versatile, jack of all trades, kind of do everything. Air's thing is that it is good at dodging and mobility. So if any element is going to be the very best at flying and moving around, that should be air. But just because air should be the best overall at flying doesn't mean that fire shouldn't have some like situational advantages. Maybe air is better at moving upwards, but fire is better at a quick jet sideways if you need to do that, for example. Because you can shoot flamethrowers sideways to maybe just quickly launch yourself that way. While air, maybe you can get a lot of height, or maybe you can slowly glide down and do all these loops like glider, but maybe you have less like agility and burst speed like that. Oh yeah, Mr. Magikarp just said the same thing that I was saying.
Mr. Cliche says, will all elements have the same amount of moves? Also, I hope that the level system won't make it so you're at an unfair advantage against others with more powers.
Yeah, so every element will have roughly the same number of moves. You'll notice that Earth in the current game right now has a lot less, and that's why we're going to rework Earth next to give it more moves. Same with Fire, it's going to be reworked to give it more moves. The level system is tricky, and I absolutely want to make sure everyone's on the same playing field. But the challenge with that is that when you first start up the game, you don't even know what all the moves are. So to bring you up to the same playing field as everyone else, we need a way to teach you what all the moves are. And just dumping you in the deep end where you have all the moves from the beginning isn't the right way to teach people. The right way to teach people is to give you these simple moves first, and then to slowly introduce the new moves over time so that you can actually learn them. The goal here is to maybe say the leveling system where you unlock the moves is kind of like an extended tutorial. It's just maybe a couple hours long. And then after those couple hours, you have unlocked every move for that element, and then you are on the same playing field. And hopefully, you'll be on that same playing field and you'll actually understand the tools you have. Well, if you just started with all the abilities from the beginning, you would start on the same playing field, but you wouldn't understand the tools you had, so you would still be behind.
I see some mentions on Rumble's system is simply perfect for this. I'm not entirely familiar with Rumble. What does their system do?
Oh, they start you with the few simplest moves, and then you have to do a lot of matches to unlock the rest. It takes a long time to unlock them all, though.
Yeah, I mean, the little bit that I played of Rumble, I noticed that they lock you out from joining games until you finish some set of tutorials, which can be a good thing in some ways, but also not in others. Because if you're like me and you're not very good at the game and you find it difficult to learn, you can just kind of give up after 20 minutes. Because game not fun if I have to spend 2 hours learning before I can play it. Oh, they made the
Yeah, so I
mistake of
got
matching you against people with more moves. Yeah, that's not great.
mhm. I got a bunch of people on the development team to try Rumble. I think like half the people managed to beat the tutorial, and the other half of the development team just gave up and never even beat the tutorial. Rumble is it is a very cool game, but it can be very hard to get into. One of my goals for Elements is to try to keep that same level of flexibility and detail and complexity that Rumble can achieve for the really good players, but to make that more accessible so that everyone can do that, even if you're new to VR.
Yeah, and that's kind of what the hard part was with going from spending 6 months a year and a half, whatever, playing our game, where it's more or less relatively easy to learn the basics of how to get a move off, and then trying to go to Rumble and being like, oh my god, why is none of this working? I'm punching like this. I swear I'm doing it right, and it's just like punch like this, and I'm like, I'm trying. It's not working. So, because Rumble's like all gesture based, and we have some gesture based controls, but there's also buttons, so something's going to go off one way or another. But if we don't get the gestures right in Rumble, just nothing happens. Which, again, there's some very skilled players out there. They do great with it. I know we have a lot of them in the server. Thankful for you guys because you're good at testing Earth, but very complicated. Great Saxtonian says, Rumble has a pretty simple system for matchmaking yourself against people of your own level, but yeah, the level of technicality needed to get into the game is not easy. Yeah.
Yeah, because they have this matchmaking slider where you get to like pick who you're matched against. You can like
Oh,
do
really?
friends only or like everyone or yeah.
Mr. Cliche adds, replying to they made a mistake of matchmaking you against people with more moves. Mr. Cliche adds, but if that didn't happen, the player pool for high levels would be limited. Sure, but do you also want to play against someone that has a bunch more moves than you and then die because they're much more skilled? I I don't know. I mean, I guess people do. Mr. Magikarp says, "Are there any potential features you would like to add but feel like they're out of scope?"
Where do I start? There's hundreds of them. So, uh, what are the main ones? I'd like to have a story mode. Yeah.
Jinx.
You know, with whole unique levels and an interesting narrative and all these different characters. And like you progress over time and you explore this giant world. And you can't do that because it's so much work. And we do not have the resources to pull that off and also make it fun in PvP. So it's like when we changed from co-op to PvP focus, we were saying, yeah, we're not really going to have a story mode, but we are going to have really good PvP. We think that's the right move. But the other, there's like an endless list of features that I wish I could add if we had resources. One big one is sub-elements, which, we have obviously been considering sub-elements since the very beginning of the game and how their design might work. Things like, metal for earth or sand for earth, or like a whole form for mist for water, or all these different things. Those would be awesome. They might happen eventually. They might not happen eventually. We'll see. But adding a sub element is as much work as adding the original element. And that's really hard. Because, yeah, adding like a whole new earth or water isn't just you make the programming for the moves and you make the effects for the moves. That's doable. But designing it and testing it and balancing it and making sure the controls are intuitive is really hard. Like there were a lot of people saying earlier that wish that the controls for say the water tentacles are easier, or that you had different options for activating these different things. I agree with that, and I would love to improve that. but designing the controls to be more intuitive for everyone who plays the game, even people who are new to VR, while you only have one button, sometimes two buttons to control it with, it's just really hard. And the more elements and sub-elements you try to add, the harder that becomes. Again, it's possible, and it might happen eventually, but I can't promise anything. And yeah, just having the sub-elements be recolors with stat changes is an option, but like, I don't know, it would just be so much more cooler if they also had unique moves. Yeah.
Like it's cool, and because like you guys have the context of we're telling you, well, it's probably too much work, and then we could add it, and then people who don't really have that context, they just play the game, they go, why did you just add recolors to the elements? Why did you do actual sub elements? Then we get negative reviews. So like,
But an example of something that is like in between that idea and a full sub element that might eventually be added if we do add sub elements, it'd be like a super hot blue fire mode, where when you equip that, you have slightly different moves. Your moves do more damage, your moves are bigger AoE, that kind of thing. But maybe whenever you use a fire move, you take a bit of damage. That's the kind of thing where we would have totally unique VFX for it. We would have mostly the same controls for it, but we would have different stats, and we would try to give it very different gameplay by adding these weird twists. See, related to that, people asking for colorable fire.
yeah.
It's a lot harder than it sounds. It's not just like something where we can have a thing in the code that says you put in your color and then all the fire changes to it. We would have to go through every fire effect in the game and manually create a version of that fire effect for every color. And there's an infinite number of colors that you might want to change it to. And we can't have a system automatically do this because the VFX are more complicated than just everything's the same color. They'll have variants of colors. Every VFX is set up in different ways where they even like control the colors through different parts of the VFX system in Unity. And if we just tried to apply a generic method to that to have them all be changed in the same way, it would not look good.
Like if you saw that guy who modded the game recently and he added green fire, he added some context later on where he said he actually wanted to add blue fire, but the problem was the sprite for the fire texture was already orange, yellow, red. So I guess when he overlaid the color, it just went green. That was the closest he could get to blue without manually going in and changing that sprite. And that's what we would have to do for every single color. Otherwise, it'd be very limited. And they wouldn't look quite right either.
If any enterprising modders want to do that, more power to them, though.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely, you can do it for yourself. It'll only be visible on your side, your client side, but still kind of cool. Could make strong attacks blue fire. That's a potential option.
Yeah, our VFX artist was actually proposing that as a new fire ultimate move that just shot blue fire. But I feel like we should save blue fire for a sub element. Because, like, if I got one blue fire attack, I want all my attacks to be blue fire. But if people do want, blue fire as these ultimate moves instead of as a sub element, that is something that I could change my mind on.
Jumping back a little bit, one that was scrolling off screen. Has the stamina/bending limit been adjusted? There were problems with it being too much, if I remember right. We haven't had stamina for a while, have we?
Yeah, it's been how many months since we removed it?
Yeah, so stamina's gone, but then when we removed stamina, there were some issues with some specific abilities with specific air and fire for the most part, where you could just like kind of spam them infinitely as a problem. But we fixed those bugs like the next patch after, and it's probably even different now because the new physics system. There's still a couple things like the air ball. You can kind of just wave it, the one-hand air ball. You just wave it back and forth, which can be kind of toxic. But I think it's also considered a weaker move, and you might just be able to block. I'm not sure if it blocks all damage.
Yeah, blocking just removes all damage from that.
So, yeah, that's kind of what it's at. When we first added stamina, though, I was very much proponent of not having stamina, and Rory's like, it can't be done. We need to have stamina. And then we ended up removing it, and I was like,
Look, I still think that we could have stamina.
It's such a pain, though. You just can't do anything. You're just stuck sitting there, and you're just like, okay, kill me, I guess.
Just get better at managing it.
Oh, thank you. Just get good. That's the official answer from
Exactly.
Local Motion Devs, everyone. Get good.
Yep, it is. Yeah, there's other games out there that have stamina, like Chivalry 2. That's a great PvP fighting game that you have stamina, and the whole game's about managing your stamina. And like, how do you do all these combos to hit your enemy and make them run out of stamina before you do? It's a fun game.
The Great Saxtonian says, "Ooh, a fire ultimate that powers up the player, giving them blue fire, but all the same moves but stronger. Basically, Super Saiyan for fire." Mr. Magikarp responded, "Yes, but that would still require changing all sprites. It's not that we can't change all sprites. We could for some limited set of things. It's just in terms of like adding color selectors, just like we did for like the hair and eyes recently, it's not nearly as easy."
Mm-hmm. But something like an ultimate that makes you an ultimate that gives you blue fire could be cool. But this might be something that would be even better if we saved it for sub element.
Mr. Cliche says, "Real life stamina over VR stamina." That is true.
Mm-hmm. I agree with that. If you're physically strong and active in real life, that should give you an advantage in the game. So if you want to get good in the game, start exercising.
Yeah, great, thanks. Cool. Mr. Matchcraft
This is
says,
my official stance.
"This is your official stance. Get good, be
Mm-hmm.
better, be healthy."
Yeah. I want people to be healthy. I want you to exercise. Exercise is good for you. I made this game to trick myself into exercising.
Suspicious. Yeah, I would say this game in particular is not the best if you have accessibility concerns. Like Superfly, you could play sitting down pretty easily, and it was mostly fine. I mean, you might hit your chair a little bit, but this one's not really great for playing sitting down, for example, which is sort of a shame because we'd like to be accessible to as many people as we can, and we do try to add accessibility and other things like even the Superfly. We added subtitles now in multiple languages and things like that, but physical effort wise, there are limits when you have gesture based controls. Is this Q&A being uploaded to a channel? Yeah, it'll come up on our Elements Divided YouTube channel, I don't know, an hour or two after this Q&A is done, assuming the video is recording properly and that doesn't get like randomly corrupted or no audio again like the last time I tried to record Discord. It's kind of my fault, but you know.
Note from Mr. Magikarp, breaking news that we've ended all weakness on the planet by forcing people to exorcise to play Elements Divided. But not exercise, exorcise.
Yeah,
you have to, get all the ghosts out of here.
Yeah, get all the demons.
Before you can play the game.
Miss Cliche has one last question request. Yeah, shoot. Will there be a battle announcer? We're actually working on that.
Like, yeah, let me add a screenshot
update after that. Yeah, we have this big pack of different battle announcer alliances. This is something I was working on a few months ago, or not a few months ago, a month or two ago. But we were still working on Quantum, and we need to finish that first. So one of the next updates, yes, we're going to have some announcer lines that'll be like, defeated! Exterminated! That kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. And Aaron is probably implementing it as we speak.
Entirely possible. It's going to be fun, I can't wait, honestly, because we tested it out just a little bit without implementing all of them. And it is really satisfying when a match ends and you win, it just goes, victory! Like, have a good night, Mr. Cliche.
Good night.
Hopping back to stamina. Stamina in VR, I think, would be frustrating. Like, if I wave my arms and nothing happens, I'm getting physically tired for no reward in the game. That's how I felt, which was why I was very much anti-stamina from the beginning, but I was outvoted. Until eventually we removed it.
You're vindicated eventually.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have any secret things we can show off for the last people here? I've got like the whole techniques list.
Yeah? You could share screen on the document.
Yeah, what other stuff would we have that's fun? A preview of the Hub World update? It would take a while for Unity to load though. Could show you some of our notes for the elemental moves and like how we're designing them on the back end.
Mr. Magikarp says, "Are there any questions you guys wish we would ask going in?" I think I'm just glad anyone showed up at all.
Yeah, I mean, ask whatever you want. I'm happy to answer anything. And we don't really have any wishes for stuff. This is time for you and what you want to know.
Yeah, I figured it was a good time to do a Q&A since we finally got the netcode update out, and that at least some people might want to know, like, what's coming next now that we're finally done with this 2.5-month long update. Okay, so favorite Avatar character. Ooh, Rory, you go first.
The announcer in Legend of Korra.
Yeah, he's great. Cabbage Man. My cabbages!
If we had been one of the elements, which we actually choose? I think we answered at the start, but my answer is Earth, just because it's versatile and flexible. There's Earth everywhere, and you can shape it into whatever you want. Be really practical in real life.
Yeah, I think I said water. I just always kind of associate with the waterbender fantasy. I always thought it was kind of cool. Mr. Magikarp, do you guys want to distance yourselves from Avatar, or do you view it as a spiritual successor? I think we have two differing opinions on that.
I want to distance the game from Avatar because of legal reasons. Because we do not have the rights to make an Avatar game. I wish we did, but we don't. So, without those rights, we cannot be too close to Avatar, or we will get sued, and then the game will get deleted, and then the company collapses, and then I lose my job, and I don't want that to happen. So, yeah, gotta distance it. If we did have the rights to Avatar through some miracle, then that would be absolutely amazing. But it did not work out.
Yeah. It's not completely for lack of trying either. It's just almost impossible to get in contact with Avatar Studios. And what little leads that we did have did not pan out. And it's also prohibitively expensive, supposedly, to get the IP. I mean, my kind of thought is, I see where Rory's coming from, like, distance it for legal reasons, but from a community manager perspective, I'm going to mention Avatar literally all the time, as much as I can, through more unofficial, we're just chatting means, not necessarily an official advertisements, because I know that's what you guys are comparing us to, and the best way to be like, why did we do it like X or Y, is because, well, often it kind of lines up with the show. Not always, but often. And everyone likes Avatar. The amount of, I've been processing the beta testers to get old ones out, and I think I saw no less than 40 different Avatar based profile icons on people's Discords. Clearly, you guys are a fan. Yeah, you try not to compare because it's not the same. It's not exactly the same. We do take inspiration from some other animes, but it was the first inspiration, I should say.
Yeah, great Sectonian. Your profile picture is a wonderful example of that.
I love Eric. He's great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So Avatar is not our only inspiration, and there are a bunch of others. And there's actually some people on the dev team who are, trying to purposely distance the game from Avatar as much as possible and use other inspirations as much as possible, to support the legal reasons, but also because the other inspirations are cool too. So Jujutsu Kaisen is actually the thing I was about to mention, Mr. Magikarp. So, for example, the fire arrow is inspired by Jujutsu Kaisen. There's one scene near the end of season 2 where a fire arrow-like attack is used to great effect. But also, the water atom bomb, the new ultimate that's being added, was directly inspired by the hollow purple attack used in season 1. And yeah, we have also considered, domain expansions as an ultimate. So a fire domain expansion that just summons a giant sphere of fire and burns everyone trapped inside. We duke it out in that ring. That would be awesome. If we can get the VFX for it to work. We've tried, the VFX have been a pain. There's others like that. I could see some water domain expansions being cool too. There's probably more. Ooh, some of the fire attacks were inspired by Fire Force. I think they also used some fire arrows, and that was also one of our inspirations there. There are a bunch of Naruto attacks and fight scenes that were cool. I know that there are some earth and fire things that we took inspiration from there. But yeah. Me and the VFX artist on the team are both big JJK fans, and we're kind of the two people who are putting most time into the elemental abilities. So we are sneaking in as many JJK references as we can. Like the Fire Pillar Ultimate, that's similar to some of the moves from one of the fights in JJK Season 2. I don't know.
Great Sextonian says, part of me always wished the fire beam attack pose was more like the Final Flash.
Final Flash, yeah. So you absolutely can use it like that. It's if you spread your arms out like that, I think it'll just aim based on your head location. It's like you charge up the attack in the center, and then you can like spread your arms out wide to shoot it.
Mr. Magikarp says, who the hell had the idea to give Era Katana so I can give them a promotion?
I think so. The air sword was like a two-part idea. I think it was Mariano, our VFX artist, who had the original idea for the air sword as an ability back when we were doing the first air rework. And then I was implementing it. I think it was. I think I had the idea to give the air sword the vault ability, so that when you hit the ground, it sends you flying. And then I think it was Aaron who had the idea to make the air sword transition into the air glider so that you could fly off of that. So, and I might be forgetting people or mixing up the details because it was a little while ago. But I think to get the cool combo that we have now of the air sword vault into the air glider, that was 3 different people's ideas being combined. And that is my favorite part of the game for sure.
Great Sextonian says, my issue with the air sword is I find myself bending over a lot and I don't realize it, so my back hurts.
Rip. Back pain sucks. Mr. Magikarp says that if his name is a mouthful, we can just say Carp. We can't.
I think
what if I want to say Mr. Magikarp?
He said if his name is a mothful.
Oh, yeah, a mothful. Okay. There was a moth flying around my house last night. I don't know where it went.
Yeah.
Shadow was chasing it.
Yep. Cookie's done that before. She found a giant moth that I swear had a wingspan the size of my palm. You're typing with your left hand because the other one hurts a little. What did you do to your right hand? A lot? That's unspecific.
Sounds bad.
Basketball. Oh, hitting the ball up and down.
Great Saxonian. I really like that idea. It says, thinking of other elemental attacks, and what comes to mind is Roy Mustang from Full Metal Alchemist. You just snap his fingers and light something on fire. That would be really fun. Would that be like an ultimate? Because it feels too powerful for a basic move.
Yeah.
But Maeve, have you seen Full Metal Alchemist?
No, I haven't.
Okay. Well, the move is just like, there's this guy, his signature move is he snaps his fingers, and like the person he's aiming at just like catches on fire, like massively burns up, and he just keeps doing that.
Oh.
This is one epic fight scene where he's like fighting this evil character of, oh yeah, I posted an image in chat, that kind of thing. Just snap, 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 and
Damn,
every time there's a massive explosion.
What about
would that be like an ultimate move that you could? It's like smaller individual explosions than that, but a lot more spammable.
Mm.
I'm wondering how we'd implement that.
Can have
Because
it
the
behave
ultimate
sort of like the new
moves,
air one. You aim it, and then if you get it on target, just.
true. But it would be fun if you could like just spam a button to keep spamming it instead of it going off automatically. Hmm. Yeah, if you can think of controls for that, definitely write it down because that would be a fun one to add.
Could be fun to
Yeah,
set a
could be
bunch
fun
of.
to
Yeah.
like Fairy's Mist Barrage. Yeah, that's true. That was actually one of our candidates for a new Fire Ultimate that we decided to not do and instead do a Fire Pillar. Was when you like summon a bunch of fiery meteors that all streak towards an area and then do like a bunch of little explosions across that area. But then we thought the Fire Pillar was cooler, so we decided to do that instead. We are eventually going to add more ultimates, so that could make it back in. But it has to compete against the just big explosion where they shoot a beam forward and then boom. I feel like an explosion could also be fun as a Fire Ultimate. Mr. Magikarp asks, back to that game jam for your next game idea, what were some other notable candidates? So, two parts of this. There were a bunch of ideas that we had in the past, but my brain is an endless font of game ideas, and I have a lot of new ideas now. But the other ones that were big in the past, I think there were two, but only one is coming to mind. The one that is coming to mind was called Dragon Slayer VR. Imagine kind of blade and sorcery, but instead of fighting just like one or two dudes on the ground in blade and sorcery, what if you start the game like fighting giant monsters and dragons and then it just scales up from there? I don't think there are many VR games that actually give you that kind of epic feeling or range. Except now Asgard's Wrath 2 is out and it kind of does that already, so uh, would have to figure out how to change that idea to differentiate it and make it stand out compared to Asgard's Wrath 2. Yeah, so kind of like Behemoth, except that instead of just climbing up the side of the behemoth and slowly stabbing it, you're like an epic anime swordsman and you just like stand there and you just like outmatch it in strength. And maybe not quite as big as Behemoth, but you know, like a dragon flies at you and then you just like grab the dragon and slam it into the ground. Wait, that's just Superfly. Uh,
Yep.
huh. Yeah.
Any plans for
But it,
specific? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
oh, yeah, I was just thinking that this would be in the context of a game that's like maybe you're attacking some castle and it's a medieval fantasy roguelike type thing where you're going around and slaying hordes of little dudes and then occasionally these big monsters come out. So epic fantasy RPG, but very much focused on the epic side of it. A lot of other VR games try to go realistic. This would try to go like just maximum cool factor. And that was the concept. We decided to do elements instead though. And if I were to pick a new game to make right now, I would not pick that one because Asgard Wrath 2 is very similar.
Any plans for specific elemental rock paper scissors mechanics, like water being strong against fire, fire over air, air over earth, earth over water, etc.?
No. Not that that's not a cool idea, but what's more important for the game is that it's balanced in PvP. And if the PvP is such that one element has a big advantage over another, that's really hard to make fair if you're the one who like has the weaker end of that deal. It's not fun to lose a match just because you picked the wrong element. If you lose a match, it should be because the other player was more skilled. Competitive VR rock paper scissors confirmed. Oh my god, let's do that right now. Drop elements, new game idea. Hmm. Should we share future game ideas? There are some VR games that I'm curious how people react to.
Up to you.
Well, I will leave that up to people in the audience. If you're curious about that, feel free to ask. If not, ask something else.
Index controller exclusive for rock, paper, scissors.
Yeah, or maybe you need hand tracking on the Quest or something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, hand tracking to the game just so you can use it on that.
Fun fact, Elements had hand tracking in the beginning, and then we very quickly gave up.
Not very quickly. It was in there for a solid 6 months plus.
Before the game was PvP.
Yeah. Hand tracking is just not fast enough to be good for really fast gestures. It lags behind, and then all your moves lag behind. And then who wants to play a laggy game?
Fifth Element gun.
Oh, do you want to tell the story of the weapons mode?
So, before the game was PvP, and honestly, I think before we even made the Switch, I think we removed it, but there did used to be a fifth element, which was weapons. And you had a sword and like a spear on a long stick, and you had a bow that did not work. And we never got it working until eventually you had the fire bow to the actual fire element. And we tried it out, and we kept it for a while, and we just found it wasn't really very fun. We could have all these fantasy, elemental moves, so why would you pick sword? And then we kind of ended up adding each of those things back into the elements one by one in kind of other ways. Like now there's the air sword and the fire bow and that kind of thing.
And it was originally designed for co-op versus AI as the challenge element. Like, okay, sure, anyone can be fire and can like win a match, but can you still win the match without any elemental abilities?
It's also partially why I think we kind of had punching as a thing, like to add to that. But now you can just punch with any ability equipped. Miss Smashcraft says, no, I was imagining fighting game where you play as the different hand forms and battle. Imagine a tournament that just starts with the announcer saying scissors versus rock.
Isn't that imagine runs pretty fast? Like rock just wins.
Well, I think he's talking about literally you just have a hand and they just start kind of going at each other. But it's in the position of, scissors or rock or paper.
Fair enough.
No, scissors is more skill level, skill gap. How would you make a weapons class now that you've settled on the sci-fi aesthetic?
First answer is I wouldn't. The game is about element bending, and it's going to stay that way. But if we had to do a weapons class now, for PvP, it would probably have to be balanced against the others. And in the sci-fi aesthetic, something like just a gun would make a little bit of sense, but I wouldn't want it to be like an assault rifle, because like one person pulling out an assault rifle while the other's doing these martial art bending moves isn't fun. If there was a weapons class, it might be something like, oh, you've got a laser sword, and you've got a grappling gun, and then you've got some kind of energy blaster that shoots these energy balls that travel a bit more slowly. So then you could have a mix of different things where maybe you'll use your laser sword to deflect abilities or slash things out of the air, and the grappling gun to move around. Then maybe you've got these like gravity wave blasters that'll push people back. That kind of thing could possibly work for a weapons class if we had to have one. But I think sticking with the elemental abilities is going to be more fun. Sci-fi aesthetic, Mr. Magikarp asks if that's really settled. It's pretty settled. While we could change it, I don't think there's much of a solid reason why we would want to change it. It's kind of the aesthetic that makes the most sense with just you're in a sports tournament and there's a stadium, and the stadium has all of these cool, unique features that wouldn't be possible in real life. So what other setting would let you have a stadium with all of these fancy terrain things? Sci-fi just makes the most sense there. we're not aiming for super hard sci-fi, but kind of a near modern, vague sci-fi is the feel.
There's also something to say about Superfly had a similar aesthetic, so we're kind of familiar with it already, which helps with development. But, I still think Elements looks a lot better than Superfly has ever looked.
Yeah, like for Elements, we have a real level designer. For
Yeah, that helps.
Superfly, we had me trying to write code to make art.
And me making building textures on Substance, which doesn't exist anymore. It's different now, and Substance is
Wait, what?
complicated, guys. They
Does it not
changed it.
exist?
It's built into another piece of their software. It's not called the same thing anymore, and I don't think you can get on subscription. Maybe I don't know. It's complicated. Adobe's weird.
Huh. Yeah, the Great Saxonian mentions a grappling gun pickup where you could grab it and then like point somewhere and zip around. Um, that's interesting, but what are the controls? We're kind of using all the buttons already. Unless it like
Yeah.
replaces your dash.
All right, we're coming up on about an hour and a half, so let's say two more questions each, and then probably wrap it up.
If no one has any questions, I do have a question for the audience, but your questions are more important here.
Oh, that counts as one of your questions, Sister Magikarp. You only have one now. No, I'm joking.
I'm not joking. You only have one.
I could have said one more question. I was being generous giving you two.
0 more.
A genie?
Yeah. Like you have three
yeah.
wishes, but whenever you say anything, they...
Yeah. Oh, I saw a video recently that was a parody thing about genies. Like, you use your first wish to say, you're going to answer any other question I have and tell me the bad things that would happen if I wish for that wish. And he was trying to, like, get the perfect wish to, like, get a ton of money or whatever, and he still messed it up in the end. Yeah, you saw it. It's a great video.
I have not seen this video.
You can find it later. Rory, do you want to ask your question?
Sure. Yeah. So if no one else has questions, I have one. So we're going to keep working on Elements for a while, probably another 2 years-ish. Depends on how that goes. But my brain is an endless source of game ideas. And I have a bunch of different VR game ideas that I'm curious how people respond to. And I'm just wondering whether any of these stand out as cool, you'd want them, or wouldn't really want them. So, idea number 1. This is not mine. This is from Mariano, a VX artist who came up with this. VR game, but you're a bear, but you're a Special Forces commando. You and your friends of like this bear Special Forces team go and play these co-op missions. You like go through a level and like bonk humans on the head and accomplish these various silly objectives. But you're a bear. Very cartoony aesthetic, kind of silly, focused on co-op missions, kind of a shortish linear story. Fairly simple game, might have an optional PvP mode. Main selling point, you're a bear. Let's see. Next game idea for another VR one. Imagine Pokemon Legends Arceus. So big open world. You can wander around. There are these various monsters and creatures roaming the environment, and you can throw things that totally aren't Pokeballs at them to capture them and befriend them and make them part of your team. Large levels to explore. Big nature scenes are filled with these various monsters. And then once you catch them, you can then throw them out to fight these other monsters with voice commands. So you speak into the headset, and then it hears what you're saying and interprets that as a command that your monster is supposed to follow, and use that to order them around, to make them fight these other monsters for you, to level up. And it's kind of like this RPG monster catching game, but in VR with voice commands. Oh yeah, I know about those patents. So I would. This idea depends on how that resolves, but there would maybe really not be balls. There would be a. I saw a game that used like capture guns.
Oh boy.
But you could also do. I need a word for them. There could also be nets. There could also be. You just pat them on the head to capture them, because like it's not capturing, it's befriending. They're your friends. And yeah.
I didn't realize you could patent throwing ball to catch a creature in the field.
Can you legally do this? Maybe not. Has Nintendo done it anyway? Probably. Can we fight them on it?
No.
The legal system is whoever has the most money for lawyers.
Capture ballista.
Okay, that would be great. Capture catapult. Then I'll put one more VR game idea to just round it out. Let's say, just imagine Minecraft, but in VR. And yeah, there is a big voxel world. You can play online with your friends. You can swing these pickaxes or axes at blocks to break them, build blocks into new structures, fight these monsters that wander around the darkness in caves. Giant procedurally generated world. Kind of a sandbox thing. Go at your own pace, do whatever you want. Build houses, build farms, explore things, get diamonds. That kind of thing. No set story.
The Spanish Carp says, pretty sure Minecraft VR fills that niche.
But like, the official Minecraft VR doesn't have great motion controls, so like, if we made a game from the ground up for it, we could do that better. And Minecraft isn't on Quest.
Kind of surprised it's not. I mean, they have so many different versions of Minecraft, and many of them are mobile. How hard would it be for them to... I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it mentions Ancient Dungeon. Yeah, a little bit like Ancient Dungeon, but with much larger voxels so that they're feasible to edit. There is a Minecraft mod called QuestCraft that brings Minecraft to Quest, but like it's a mod and the controls are only okay because the controls were designed for PC after all. So yeah, I'm curious if people have thoughts between Bear Commando VR, Totally Not Pokemon Legends Arceus VR, and Totally Not Minecraft VR. Any one of those stand out?
We're
as
never
cooler?
going to have an original idea, are we, Rory?
No idea is ever original. That is true across all media. Anyone who says that they have an original idea is lying. Every idea is based on previous ideas.
Yeah, but we do tend to pick ones that have to be based off of very large IPs.
That's just because they're cool.
I mean, they are. So far, it's worked out.
Mm-hmm. Patting on that head thing. Skittish Dasa. Oh yeah, that would be cool. And all the different monsters in the field would have these different like opinions of you. Like you said, the docile ones would be that easy, but then the others could be harder. Yeah. So the first idea just spawned out of nowhere. Someone had a random thought and they wrote it down, and they accidentally made an idea. That is my history of ideas. Thank you for coming to my lecture.
TED Talk, that's what it is. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. You should teach philosophy.
I took a lot of philosophy classes in college. It's fun. Yeah, Great Saxonia mentions traversal as a big question and also a vacuum tool. For traversal, I was imagining that you would be riding the monsters. I think especially riding a flying creature could be a lot of fun.
You have to suck them into the vacuum, that'd be very humane. But don't worry about it, it's fine.
Okay. What if instead of throwing balls at them, you throw food at them, and then they eat the food and they're happy?
I mean, it's potential. The reason they did it to evil ghosts, not cute animals. Yeah. Oh, I went to an arcade recently and they had Luigi's Mansion as an arcade game, which was interesting in of itself. But you got to hold this big fake vacuum thing, but it had the strongest vibration ever, and like I could still feel my arm shaking by the end of the game because it's just like, uh,
So I guess a question for the people here who kind of liked the Pokemon idea. How would you want the controls for commanding your monsters to work? Because I could imagine it being like primarily voice controls where you speak into the microphone and that's how it works. But do you think it might get frustrating if that was the only way to command them or that was the main way? Would you want like a backup control scheme or like no voice commands at all? How do you feel? Yeah, Mr. Magikarp mentions Waltz the Wizards. That is definitely what I was looking at as inspiration for voice controls.
Sextonian says a backup control scheme I think would be necessary. That's kind of my viewpoint. I think voice controls could be really cool, but like if you're alone in your room at like 1 a.m. and you've got roommates sleeping in the other room, you don't want to be screaming out the equivalent of generic like Pikachu, come here.
I mean, that would be hilarious, though.
Yellow electric rat, I choose you.
Yeah, just imagine you're sleeping and then your roommate in the middle of the night shouts out, "Pikachu, dodge!"
What if your mic was broken? Well, if you're playing on a Quest headset, which like I think 80% of people are nowadays, it'd be hard to have a broken mic, though not impossible. I guess if you're on PCVR though, then that might be more difficult because I don't know that all of them have built-in microphones.
Mm-hmm.
I just think it's awkward when you're like, if I'm playing with someone else, like if I was doing this co-op with someone else, I'd be perfectly fine to be like dodge or run. But if I'm by myself, it feels real awkward. Pikachu, dodge! And then my husband comes in, he's like, who are you talking to? No one.
You talk to Pikachu.
You're talking to Pikachu. And he's like, it's the Pikachu in the room with us right now because he sound like a crazy person. Mr. Magikarp says, me and my brother are working on a game that's all about training the monsters to act on their own with modifiable behavior trees. That's interesting.
I'm curious how you're setting up the modifiable behavior trees. Is this like users directly control the behavior trees? How do you make that intuitive?
Also says for a backup control scheme, could have different whistles for which move to use. I mean, it would be buttons, or Saxonia instead of like a menu you could bring up, or maybe you click different buttons that say like, run, dodge, or something like that.
I'm worried that a menu with buttons might not work so well in action combat, though.
I guess it would kind of depend.
Oh, yeah. Follow-up question about this game. Action combat or real-time combat?
A radial menu. Yeah, that we could do a menu kind of like we had in Superfly, where there's a big ring.
Say, action combat or turn-based combat? That's what I meant. Extra turn-based. Yeah, a radial menu with gestures like Superfly could work. Action. Why action? Okay, fair enough.
Turn-based is how Pokemon currently operates, so I'd be curious to see anything that's supposed to be like Pokemon that is not turn-based.
Well, I could send you a list.
Oh boy. Well, I mean, there's no shortage of PC Pokemon clones, right? Just not a lot of VR ones.
Yeah. I was looking for VR creature collecting games, and I only found 2, and both were turn-based. Oh. And one was an NFT game.
Yeah. Why would I want to play a VR game that eliminates all things that make VR unique, like free movement and diegetic controls?
Yeah. Exactly.
Saxonian says, personally, I think turn-based is interesting.
Here's a list of probably a few hundred action creature collecting
Boy.
games.
I will check that out later.
Sextonian, why do you say turn-based? What's your reasoning? Oh, but Maeve, I'd say the biggest, creature collection action game, Pal World.
Yeah, but they're like I feel like they're gonna get sued by Nintendo for like directly ripping off their models.
I mean, I don't know if you heard, but they did get sued by Nintendo.
Oh, how did that go?
I mean, we don't know the details. The lawsuit
It's
was
still
there.
up, right?
It was for, yeah. The lawsuit was for patent infringement, not copyright infringement, though. But some speculation is that they only sued them for patent infringement because they didn't think they could win the case about copyright infringement. But they still didn't like the copyright stuff.
The builder NPC asks, "What's the question?" The question was VR Pokemon Legends Arceus, essentially, and we were just asking for the questions and what people thought about it. Like, should it be free movement or like turn-based combat, or was it live action combat? Whatever.
Yeah. So if you're a trainer, you're roaming around this open world, there's all these creatures or monsters wandering around there that you can befriend and then train and have them beat up other monsters for you because for some reason that's okay. How would that work in VR? Or is that even an idea that you would want to play?
Turn-based wouldn't be bad if you play as the trainer. Yeah, I'm assuming you play as a trainer, although it would be an interesting flip to play as one of the monsters. Okay.
Oh, yeah, I totally want to add a capture ballista. That would be great.
There you go. Yeah. Capture Trebuchet.
Yeah, got two options. Either you join me the easy way and we're friends, or I pull out the capture ballista.
I'd only play if it was multiplayer, though. Yeah, that seems to be the sentiment with VR games nowadays, is it has to be multiplayer or I'm not playing.
Would you want it to be like a co-op multiplayer or like a PvP multiplayer?
Both. Yep. That's
Okay.
Saxtonian says, yeah, as a trainer, I think turn-based is more ideal because I think if you're limited by movement, you can't get moves off fast enough, it get frustrating.
Okay.
He also
And
says,
Saxtonian, you much prefer single-player VR.
Yeah.
Why is that?
So there's definitely people who can enjoy single player VR. I mean, our first game was entirely single player, but we then also got many complaints that it should be multiplayer, despite the fact that's not really that easy to do that. But which is why this game is multiplayer, or it's at least a big reason. I had to like convince Rory for a very long time to make Elements multiplayer at all.
Multiplayer is so hard.
Yeah,
We would be done with the game by now if it was single player.
And then it wouldn't be selling. Not as well, anyway.
I mean, not as well, but we'd be done. It's so much faster to make a single player.
That's not how it works, though. We need the money. Sales.
But we need to finish the game.
We only finally convinced Rory when a couple other developer acquaintances at like a VR conference thing were also telling him he should make it multiplayer. And then finally Rory relented, and that we started with co-op. He was like, "I'll do co-op, I won't do PvP," yeah. And then we, history.
PvP is so much harder than co-op to do multiplayer for.
I don't disagree, but I think it's gonna be much better for marketing and everything else. Let's see. If it were action, you could have much more interesting move design that isn't just damage plus status effect. That's the furthest extent it can go. Going back to PV. Go back to Pokemon.
Mm-hmm. So saying that, yeah, if none of your friends have VR headsets, then playing with strangers online isn't nearly as much fun. It's a big challenge with VR, right? Only so many people have headsets. So if I'm just casually playing games with my friends, most of them don't have VR headsets. I'm probably not playing a VR game with them.
The Builder NPC says, also, I probably wouldn't play it if it wasn't multiplayer. It's the same thing with Magitech. PvP is hard to make, and You'd rather play a very difficult co-op than a PvP game. Yeah. I'd love if Elements 5 still had a single player mode. I'm here with you on that, Roy. I mean, technically it still does.
Yeah, it's a co-op versus AI. It's not the primary focus of the game. Primary focus is multiplayer. But the game should be fully playable in single player. We are going to expand the co-op versus AI mode. And we're going to add more boss fights. We're going to add more progression there. And I think if you wanted to play Elements Divided only single player, you might not be seeing the full part of the game, but I think you could still have fun.
We definitely wanted to make sure there was some way you could play it in single player, because I think sort of the hard part is with a multiplayer game, especially on VR, is the overall player base is smaller than, say, a PC game. Although PC is harder to break into the market, but I digress. So if for some reason when we launch we don't get as many players as we're hoping, if it was only multiplayer and you had to have someone else in the lobby to play the game, then a lot of people might end up buying the game and just not be able to do anything at all. Which is the big reason why we kept co-op mode around in at least some form or function, so at least you can play the game even if no one else is online. Builder NPC says, I'm personally a boss fight fan like Dauntless. If me and a gang could take down unnecessarily hard bosses together, it would be peak.
Mr. Magikarp asks, as one of his two remaining questions, are there any features you want to add later after release? So stuff we may go back. Yeah, so there's a million things that I want to add if I have the time. And one of the big ones there is sub-elements. I think if the game releases and does well enough that we're able to continue developing it, then sub-elements is one of the serious possibilities there. And I imagine that might bring a bunch of people back if you suddenly get a lot more content. But other options would be, much simpler things, more cosmetics, more ultimates, more techniques, more maps, that kind of thing. Continuing to run tournaments and like have a competitive scene to bring people back. And also just more fun custom game modes. Kind of like the knockback mode, but like even crazier.
Builder NPC says, when the game hits the App Store, it's going to go crazy. Cross fingers, knock on wood, I sure hope so.
Yeah, hopefully. We're doing our best, but it's always a gamble. Mm-hmm. And it's not always possible to predict ahead of time whether a game's going to do well or not. So I'm very cautiously optimistic.
Elements Divided for mobile confirmed. Google Cardboard. Oh no. Does Google Cardboard still exist?
Don't think so.
It probably died just like Google Glass.
Mm-hmm.
Elements Divided played on the International Space Station Zero Gravity. Not clickbait. God, how well would that work? I'd be really curious. Can we get in contact with them?
We could add a zero gravity mode to Elements.
Oh boy.
Kind of like Loneka style. That'd be fun.
He says, gimme. Divided played on Smart Fridge and Space gone wrong.
Use the fire element and then the fridge turns into a microwave.
Can we use zero gravity with jetpack hands? You would just keep going, wouldn't you? It'd be really hard to get back down.
If zero gravity, if you fly off the stage, you just keep going. So you better be able to turn around.
Echo VR, basically. That is the point.
Also, if you're an earthbender and then you float off the ground, what do you do?
It's fine. Don't worry about it.
Maybe like a really reduced gravity so that you at least eventually return to the ground? That's the point, suffer. Okay, you have convinced me. Yeah. Making players suffer is my goal.
Could be a game mode. It would have to be maybe in a not open air map, at least. Oh, actually, it would probably do really good on the new Space Ring map we've been working on.
True.
Because you could just grab onto the wall and bring it back down eventually.
Yeah. 0.01% gravity would work well.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, the fan map, you're right, is kind of like zero gravity. The temporary zero gravity.
I feel like people have love-hate relationship with Turbo Cage.
Yeah. I'm curious how people are going to react to the space rings when that's out.
Mm-hmm. I think it's pretty cool. You just hate. There is only hate. Well, okay. I think it's kind of neat.
Well, yeah, maybe there's hate from you. I don't think there's hate from everyone. Or at least it's mixed with love from some people.
All right, so I think I'm going to cut the questions off in 10 minutes, which is 3 p.m. for us, maybe 6 p.m. for you or some other time. But so 10 more minutes. Go. Any questions posted after the turn of the hour will not be answered. 11 p.m. for you. What do you still go to bed? Get some sleep.
11 p.m. isn't that late.
Well, yeah. Is there a question limit now? I mean, technically no limit, but anything that's posted after the turn of the hour, we're probably just not going to answer. But please don't spam like 15 questions, because then it'll take us another hour to get through it. Oh boy, what's the difference between quantum and fusion? Good luck, Roy.
Okay, so this is a complicated one, but I will give the very high-level summary. There is a technique in multiplayer networking programming called rollback. Basically, how rollback works is it says, I am, every frame, guessing ahead of time what all the other players are doing. I don't know for sure what all the other players are doing because it takes time for their signals to reach my computer. So in the time for their signals to reach my computer, I make predictions. And my predictions might be right or they might be wrong. But usually they're going to be wrong because I can't guess accurately. So then when I actually do get their signals, I roll back, meaning I rewind several frames into the past, and then I correct my predictions using the actual signals that I got. Then I resimulate back into the present time. So this is kind of a more complicated framework because it means you're constantly rewinding and fast forwarding again every time you get new data from anyone. And that also means performance is a little bit tougher. But the reason that you do this is because rollback just feels way better to play for physics than like any other networking thing out there. It's just so much more accurate. And it like makes the game feel way less laggy if you have it. The difference between quantum and fusion is that quantum is designed from the ground up to work with rollback and to only work with rollback. Quantum only does rollback, it doesn't do anything else. Fusion is more of a general purpose thing. It can do rollback, and we were doing rollback in it, but it's not only designed for rollback. It can do rollback, but it can also do non-rollback models. Because quantum is designed from the ground up to be only rollback, it can do rollback better than fusion can. So for our case, where we are using rollback, quantum was the right choice, and it can do it better, and it gets much faster. There's more details there as to how quantum is better for rollback. It uses an entity component system data model, for example, and has a lot of structs, while fusion is more based on classes. Quantum totally separates simulation and view, while fusion only loosely separates them. But like, that's the high-level version. It's focused on rollback versus kind of a mix of everything.
Really, we probably should have been using quantum from the get-go, but I think Quantum 3 wasn't out when we started the project, and there was missing features in Quantum 2 or something like that.
Yeah, Quantum 2 was missing a lot. It didn't even have capsule colliders.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, and documentation was way worse and all sorts of stuff. Great Saxonian says fusion is a cheap technique to make weak gems stronger. I mean, inaccurate. Fusion is the technique that powers the sun's energy with nuclear fusion. And quantum is not a networking framework. Quantum is a model of physics, and everyone just steals its name, and I'm mad. because I studied quantum computing in grad school, and then everyone just takes the name quantum to mean whatever they want, and they never use quantum to actually mean quantum.
It's
So
really
it's like,
confusing.
nah.
It's fun every time we talk to one of our friends or family members and they ask me about the game and they say we switched to quantum and they know Rory and they know he has a degrees in like quantum computing. They're like, oh, like quantum computing, like no, it's just nope, no. Science words are cool.
Yeah.
Yep.
Building PC says fusion documentation is garbage. I actually thought it was pretty good. I mean, not as good as Unity's documentation, but better than some other libraries I've seen.
You're also illiterate. Well, that probably wouldn't help.
Yeah. Sextonian. Only understand the concept of quantum because of Outer Wilds. Outer Wilds is a cool game. It is not a physically accurate simulation of quantum. I have to be opposed to it because of that.
Mr. Magikarp responds to, I'm also illiterate with how many fingers am I holding up? Question mark?
3.
Neptune. Nice. Alright, we're running out of time. You got about 5-6 more minutes to ask questions.
If no one has questions, I have endless more future game
ideas
to share.
Oh no. Yeah,
You've seen that list.
Secret. I know. It's very long. Also, I only cut it off because otherwise this Q&A would go on for probably many more hours. And I do have things to do today. So, what ideas do you have for future Fire rework?
I mentioned one a bit earlier, which was replacing a double jump with kind of a jetpack jump. But there's going to be more. Want to figure out a new way to do environmental fire, because the old environmental fire was okay, but I don't think the graphics were ever great. So I want to rework that to keep environmental fire, but with better graphics. Same with the fire slice. I think the old fire slice was okay, but the graphics weren't great and the controls were confusing. I want to rework that to have a new version of the fire slice with better controls and graphics. Other things. I want to have more just like big fire blasty attacks, because I think it's lacking on just the big boom type stuff. It's got the fire laser, but I just want a giant flamethrower. That would be fun. So that'd be interesting. Yeah, I don't know if I have any other ideas right now. I've been focusing on my ideas on Earth. I have tons of ideas for the Earth rework. Whole documents about that.
The Builder NPC says, have you ever dealt with a bug where RPCs were taking forever to send?
Nope. They've actually always sent pretty quickly for me. Don't know what's up with there.
Mr. Magikarp says, alright, final question. Are you happy with how the beta has gone so far?
Yes. I think people are liking the game, which is always good because, we work on the game in secret for a year and then we finally let people play it and they kind of like it. That's good. It's been amazing to me how good people are at the game, because people are really good at the game. It's impressive. I think all the Rumble players are like, you've got an unfair advantage, right?
I mean, I've been pretty happy with it. I was community manager for Superfly as well, and there was just this entire year where we were working on the new game, and I was still on the Superfly server, and people would be like, hey, why aren't you updating Superfly? And I'd have to be very vague and be like, well, we're looking towards, like, the next project, but, like, can't really say anything about it. But overall, overwhelmingly, the response has been positive, which is great, because I think we had, with Superfly, when it was in alpha, I think we had far more negative feedback. Not that the game wasn't good, but just that, like, there's not enough content, there's not enough this, there's not enough that. And with Elements, there's just been much less of that. It's mostly been positive and people wanting more things added, whatever. On the other side of things, I put together a master list of anyone who's ever applied for the beta yesterday, because I had to remove old beta testers and that kind of thing. And apparently we've had over 550 applications for the beta, which is kind of nuts. That's a lot of people. And only about half of those are even testers right now, like actually have the role. But yeah, I mean, it's been cool to see how much the Discord server has grown relatively organically, which is surprising because we don't have enough for public discovery yet. So somehow you guys are finding it through other servers, elemental servers. But it's neat. When we first started, someone posted a list of all the other elemental servers, and we, of course, had less than everyone else because we just started. And now we have more users than most of the other servers, which is pretty cool, and I'm kind of proud of that. Saxtonian says the 16-player tournament was chaotic, but if that could be made stable, I think it'd be wonderful. Yeah, we haven't ran a tournament since the new update, which is I'm kind of waiting for the Earth rework because I think people are just going to kind of complain otherwise. And we've run tournaments in a couple different formats, and one where everyone had to be there was cool but kind of chaotic, and one where people could kind of play over time. Like half the people would end up dropping out, so it's kind of awkward when there's not as many people interested in playing. Oh, last week's playtest. Yes, that was very chaotic. Miss Magikarp says he found...
We are going to have to cut down the number of players, so its quest just doesn't seem to be able to handle 16. 8, maybe.
Yeah. Miss Magikarp says he found the server from a YouTube video about upcoming Element games months ago. Saxtonian says Rumble's Discord is how I got here, and Builder NPC says I found it from a Blaze. Yeah, that was very thankfully due to one of our other users who was here more at the beginning, and he posted this big list of all the other elemental discords on every single other elemental discord, which meant we got a bunch of exposure initially that we wouldn't have otherwise gotten, because it's not super great of us to go to other elemental discords and be like, hey, come to ours, it's better. But if someone else posts it, I'm just like, hey, free advertising, I'll take it. You can't fall asleep, Josh. You were just about to end, so welcome back. But yeah, I'll take one last question. Go for it.
Yeah, 2 buttons and a piece of paper.
I don't know what that means. You asked a few times earlier, and I just didn't respond because I wasn't sure what that meant. Builder NPC says I also have it posted, but most of the people in Overhaul came from that list. Yeah.
And Magikarp, I've got something to share since you mentioned the monster collecting game. There is a little bit of a prototype for commanding little friends with voice commands that I've been working on putting in Elements. And if I can get that working a little bit more, that might become a real part of the game. And if it's a popular real part of the game, then maybe that turn into a full monster collecting game. Because I got this little guy.
He's a little robot.
And you can just speak into your microphone and give him commands, and he will do that. He's just a little dude.
Do you want to tell him what color he's going to be and what his name will be?
Oh, I think a lot of them can guess already.
Well, he's not currently that color.
Well, there's going to be multiple of them with different colors. Ooh, Ziggy's a good name. We do need a name for the default one, because if the default one's gray, then yeah, we gotta need a name for that.
I want to
Ziggy, Jeff.
I want to spoil it a little bit. At least one of these is gonna be purple, and the other one's gonna be green. And I think there's only one person here who's played Superfly. The Builder NPC, you've played Superfly, right? Please tell me you know what I'm referencing by making them purple or green. Oh, you played Superfly too, Mr. Magikarp? Oh, and Joshua. Never mind, I'm very wrong. What is there purple in Superfly? If someone can get it right, I'll be very, very happy. Well, there's purple powers. Well, it's like an entity. Come on now.
It's not the turret, not the black hole.
Don't let me down.
I don't know.
Big purple guy. Well, not exactly, but closer. Purple? Typo?
Horrible.
Oh, I know, but I forgot. You're kind of figuring it out. It was a particular, another hint. It was a specific secret achievement, I think. So close. A guy called Steve. No, but you have the right vibe.
You could call the little gray guy Steve.
There you
We
go.
named the default robot.
Bob, finally! Yes, Mr. Magikarp, Bob. One of them's gonna be purple and named Bob, and the other will be green, and he will be called Grass. It's just a little reference to Superfly. Yeah, Bob. Good old Bob. How could you forget about Bob? I should get a roll for this. I'll consider it, Mr. Magikarp. I'll just give you a roll that's purple and just says Bob. We'll know what it means. Give him Bob. Okay, fine. I'll give you a Bob roll after this because I have to like go into a thing and I don't want to mess up the video recording. It just shows all our settings. Give me a roll.
At some point in the future.
What is 2 buttons on a piece of paper? I don't understand.
At some point, I'm gonna like have as a secret part of the update just all these little robots added, but you have to use voice commands to summon them. I'm not gonna tell people what the voice commands are.
Oh, there you go. Everyone just has to keep guessing.
Yep. So, yeah, just every update, try screaming, just summon Bob into the microphone, and eventually it'll work.
Well, you'll know because one day I'll start asking you if you can use microphone permissions. You should put 2 buttons in a piece of... I don't... What kind of button? Are we talking about that was easy button? Or are we talking about like a button on a I don't... I think shirt buttons. I mean, like... Do I have a paper. I know that I have a paper. Not that one. I have a piece of paper. I don't have buttons. Enjoy. Alright, any other questions, comments? My internet is unstable. Oof. Sure. 2 shirt buttons and a single piece of A4 paper. I only have the paper. I don't just keep. I don't carry shirt buttons around. Just what the. I'm not gonna. I don't know if you explain what it means. I don't. Okay. It has no meaning. Oh boy. You might see a meaning, but you don't want to say it. It's not as complex as you might think. I'm overthinking it. It's my fault. Bro really just wants 2 buttons and a sheet of paper. Okay, we're already like 7 minutes over and it's been going on for a couple hours, so I appreciate the buttons and a sheet of paper discussion. Still very confused. Don't quite get it. Thank you everyone for coming. If you were here the whole time, or even if you weren't, appreciate it. It's nice to have questions from people, especially with these community events. I know like a lot of people just kind of want to play the game and they don't attend these community events much. Oh, and there was one question I think earlier that someone said, when's the next movie night? Just to kind of touch on that, the next community event period would probably be 2 weeks from now because I think we're doing a playtest next week. Whether it'll be a movie night or something else, not sure yet. Last time we did a movie night the other week, didn't really get a lot of people and kind of had some streaming issues. Um, yeah, it was sort of I don't have a second monitor, so anytime I would click off of something or hit a button or something else, it would like glitch out. Discord was not very happy with it, so I would have to look into that a little bit more on what's the best way I could actually stream a movie without it glitching. Tell Discord off. I wish I could sometimes. Yeah. Anyway, thank you for coming. Yeah, I'll give him 2 buttons and a piece of paper. Appreciate your time. I hope you got your questions answered, and we'll probably do another one of these at some point. It's like the second one we've done. Rory, any final comments?
Yeah, I guess I wanted to say that we've got a lot of things planned, but the most helpful thing for helping us build future content is to share your ideas for what that can be. Like large parts of our plans for the Earth rework are based on all the things that people have posted about that. And I'm going to continue checking those as we implement things, look for ideas. Same for Fire, same for the Ultimates, same for the techniques. It is extremely valuable to have everyone's thoughts and insights and ideas on how we can make the game better.
Even better, if you post them specifically in the suggestions and ideas forum, then it's even easier for us to keep track of individual ideas rather than just in the overall like playtest thread. But anywhere you put it, somehow we'll find it eventually. You'll even drop a piece of paper and just 2 buttons. Yep, we got it, Joshi. I'll be looking out for a piece of paper and 2 buttons. All right.
We need to add that as a cosmetic.
A piece of paper. You just hold a piece of paper and 2 buttons. Or wait, what?
Oh.
All right. Thanks for coming, everyone. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.